It seems like I was just a kid in the early 2000s watching my family members and other teens in my town shop at our local mall at Wet Seal. Now, I was a kid, so of course I was in elementary. I couldn't fit a lot of the items. And some of the clothing there was not really for my age group, so my mom wouldn't let me get them. But I was able to get my hands on one of their popular tees, and you couldn't tell me nothing. Like, I really thought I was running things at that time. So when you fast forward to today and I see the amount of support that they still have on social media, it's very positive. I mean, when you go to Instagram, they currently have 373,000 followers, 23.9 thousand on Twitter, and 1.8 million on Facebook. So we clearly are all searching for the same thing and realize that Wet Seal is a staple of nostalgia. And I think it's a little sad that many of their stores have closed, leaving us only to go to their social sites and possible website. And I say possible because when you go to their website now, it currently states that they are under construction. If you watch my previous video on Hush, you will see why I made that type of reference and why I brought that up. And then when I go to their social media, their last post is on October of 2021 on Instagram. And about 17 weeks ago, I seen a comment asking, when are y'all coming back? And what happened? So let's go into who was Wet Seal, what were their problems, and where are they going in the future. The brand was originally named Lorne's in 1962 by the owner Lorne Huck. The theme and the aesthetic for the original items and store decor were based off his home state of California. So during the first 2 decades, Lorne's was worth about $5 million and had about 17 local department stores. While the brand was a success within those first 2 decades, I believe this is where we started to see that running theme of acquire now, expand quickly, but not having enough money to sustain or paying off the liabilities. You'll see what I'm talking about really soon. Funding Universe stated that the company was washed in debt within the first 2 decades, which could be due to the expansion. And then when you go into the 1980s, we began to see a quick change in management and ownership to make up for those mistakes. So in 1984, the Canadian retailer Suzy Shear acquired Lorne's for about $2 million. And they were responsible for the substantial growth that we seen within the 80s and early 90s. They removed a lot of the older policies, brought in fresh new ideas that could appeal to the younger and larger crowd. Some items that were very popular at the time were the junior sportswear, flower denim jeans, mini skirts, and Aztec prints. The name Lorne's was eventually changed to Wet Seal in 1990 when they incorporated. It is also speculated that the name was changed due to Lorne's wife stating at a fashion show that one of their models who wore their swimwear reminded her of a wet seal. That's terrible, y'all, but the name actually kind of worked because, it kind of helped them set themselves apart, and that's who we know them for. Some key points to remember in the 90s is that the brand acquired Contempo Casuals, who was originally owned by Neiman Marcus in 96. In 98, they acquired multiple other stores and pretty much combined them into Art & B's, bringing a total of 220 plus stores for them at that time. While this brought in great exposure on a larger scale when it comes to income and sales reaching 107 million, we began to see some of the cracks within their foundation. Just as fast as they had the success, we began to see their financial woes in 93 when they lost about 2.4 million. This was mainly due to the trends changing and the brand needing to adapt to the times. But you would think they would pretty much scale back, stop, pay attention to what's going on, no more expansions, but they didn't even take heed to that warning. Within the late 90s and going into the new millennium, they purchased 18 Zootopia stores to kind of diversify their income and go into more of children's clothing. When I think of diversifying, I think of going into a different market. So I can say that maybe they didn't strategize well. And we'll talk more about, the strategies and why I think they didn't do so well in that when it went into the new millennium. So because of the poor choices, when you look at their 2003 financials and anything before that, you can see where things were declining. I mean, their sales were increasing, but once you finally get the breakdown of everything, the cash and working capital really wasn't there. This kind of forced the brand to make the CEO, Kathy Bronstein, step down in 2003. I just want to state that around this time, the economy was not as well in 2003. So that could be a reason for a lot of the changes as well, not just, their acquisitions and moving too quickly. But they ushered in a new CEO, Peter Whitford, and designer Victor Alfredo. But that was not before they pretty much had to pay Bronstein for the wrongful termination lawsuit. I have more on that in the description if you want to know more about what really happened. Peter Whitford's goal was to pretty much close a lot of the Zootopia stores and bring in a new back-to-school line to pretty much change the sales within the third quarter. Whitford can also be seen stating that they look forward to introducing some promising new merchandising strategies, the full effect of which are expecting to materialize in our back-to-school and fall lines. They plan to develop a fresh new look for the year of 2004 as well as the spring. I get why many people took his word for it. I mean, he was the former CEO at Disney, and if you look him up on LinkedIn, you can see a lot of the things he has accomplished and done in the past. That back to school line was the exact opposite of what they expected. Their cash flow wasn't enough to support their long-term debt, and some even complained that the new school line pretty much lacked originality. It seemed very dull in a way. And then we can't forget that during this time they had some huge competitors. There was Gap and, more importantly, Abercrombie and Fitch. You all know their popularity at that time. Then there was also Victor leaving the company right before the school line even launched. So public perception kind of contributed to the decline in sales as well. I mean, why would you trust buying something when the designer leaves right before? It makes it seem like he didn't believe in the project at all. Wet Seal eventually went through a lawsuit because many believe that they actually didn't put their best foot forward. So we don't really have the time to go over the full spectrum of the lawsuit. That information will be in the description as well. But I can say they did bounce back, but in return, Whitford stepped down and Waller became the new CEO in 2005. For the sake of time, we're not going to, talk about 2005 to 2007. We're going to hop right into 2009, 2010. Wet Seal started to see their ups for the company compared to their previous year during that time. I mean, we all know about the 2008 recession. And if you didn't know, they had another issue in 2008 where pretty much a lot of their data was breached. And this was pretty much by an individual who hacked their system and stole pretty much every credit and debit card information. So they definitely had to bounce back from that and gain consumers' trust. So if you want to know more about what really happened with the data breach, that information will be in the description as well. But we can pretty much see around 2009, 2010, Wet Seal wanted to adapt and make a lot of changes. And this is where they implemented Blink by Wet Seal. This was their attempt to pretty much make new clothing that was more stylish and trendy, with the focus on newer exclusive label denim tops, bottoms, accessories, and perfumes. It was pretty much a livelier one-stop shop to complete your look at an affordable price, and the public definitely ate it up. It had them on the top for a good minute. I mean, you've seen many different celebs wear Wet Seal items. I mean, if you see my thumbnail, you'll see who I'm talking about. And Wet Seal even tweeted about it. So they were very excited to see the changes and different things that were going on. Remember how in 2004 we were warned that if things didn't turn around, Wet Seal could possibly see a Chapter 11 bankruptcy. So they definitely worked really hard to try to offset that as long as they could. They did have about $500 million in revenue and owned 478 stores. But in 2013, they had a new competitor. I mean, there was Forever 21 and Charlotte Russe. And I definitely remember that during this period, I was in high school. And when I would go back to school shopping, I would walk into Wet Seal and I would feel like they don't have anything anymore. Where's that feeling I would get when I was a kid watching my family members and other teens shop there? So I definitely went to their competitors. I'm not sure if you did, but I know I did. I was definitely at Forever 21 every week. And then you can't forget that around this time, because of the problems that they had, they basically fired 30 employees in their higher sector. And then there was the controversy of 2013. Now, I didn't know about this controversy, so this was definitely news to me. They basically settled this one out of court. If you want more information on that one, I will have it in the description. But basically, they were basically being charged with firing Black employees who didn't fit their quote unquote the company's brand of the Armani look, white with blonde hair and blue eyes. Then in 2014, they had to close their Arden stores. And when you look at the news that happened in January 27th of 2015, this was their second, not first, but second Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Only this time they had to liquidate a lot of their items. It revealed that they had about $100 million in liabilities, leading to all their stores being closed and pretty much being acquired by Gordon Brothers. Many would argue that the store was closing because, there was the e-commerce, shopping online on the rise. And while that is true, I would say that was just the straw that broke the camel's back, feather that pretty much made everything tumble down. The many acquisitions and liabilities were truly the main problem for the brand, and it made it very difficult for them to even swim. Gordon is an investment or restructuring company that basically acquired Wet Seal at an auction on March 3rd for about $3 million in 2017. Hermes can basically be seen stating that they plan to rebuild and reposition the brand and develop a unique new business model that best position them for future success. So it's clear that the success they were looking for was pretty much closing all the stores, moving online, opening their plus size label, as well as starting their collaboration with Nikki and Gabby. So if you don't know who Nikki and Gabby are, they're basically YouTubers that have about 6 million subscribers collectively, not including, who follows them separately. I can definitely say this partnership kind of makes sense. I get it. You want to appeal to more people and you want to get them to know that, hey, we're still here, even though the stores have closed. Now, I can say that around this time, I didn't know that they were still there, but apparently they were very much still popular at the time. I believe this kind of helped when it comes to crossing over and establishing themselves. I mean, Nikki's style and Gabby's style was definitely felt through this collaboration. Nikki had the sportswear type of aesthetic and Gabby had that vintage style. I'm not sure if Nikki did much posting. I did go to social media to see, did she post about the collaboration? I don't see much information about it. Maybe she cleared her social media from that time. But when I go to Gabby's page, she definitely has about 2 posts talking about the collaboration. This is pretty much what people had to say about the collaboration.
Jacket, and it has a dragon on it. And it says, "Baby, light me up," on the back, on like the upper shoulder blade area, but I mostly got this because of the dragon, because I fucking love dragons.
I think it is so cute. I'm also in love with the shorts because they're cut very nicely. They're longer in the back so that they cover your butt, but they're a little shorter in the front to be shorts. And
so the reviews did seem kind of positive and people were excited. I just cannot find the financials to prove how successful it was for Wet Seal, so we can only go off of what he said, she said. So we can definitely say that in the beginning, the website was a success, but something had to eventually happen, because if you go to the website now, as I stated earlier, you get this and you don't see much about the brand. But if you do come across them on social media, they post information such as this. So it's really unclear where the brand is going in the future. One thing that can definitely be said about Wet Seal is that they are the staple of nostalgia. I definitely remember them for who they were at the time. And I know that when you try to make some changes and try to adapt to an industry that is forever changing, it can be very difficult. But I feel like this will be the perfect time for them to pretty much make that comeback. I mean, the nostalgia type of trend is definitely in. I mean, you all seen the Coachella looks for this year. You've seen the 70s and 80s items starting to come back. So I feel like they definitely should capitalize off of it. And for the love of God, if they do, Do not expand quickly and do not take on too many liabilities. Work your way back into industry slowly but surely so that you're here to stay this time around. I can definitely say that I didn't know much about the backstory for the brand. When I was a kid, I've only seen what was given to me on the surface. So looking up a lot of this information is like mind blowing. I didn't know they had this many problems behind the scenes. So what do you remember Wet Seal for? Do you remember them in their prime? What were some of your favorite items? Did you know about their controversies and different problems that the brand pretty much had? Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.